Hello, everyone. Welcome to KFC SuperCoach TV. I'm Paton, joined by some very special guests here to talk up another huge week of KFC SuperCoach. We had a bit of a trade frenzy last week, so it'll be good to catch up and see where everyone's at and what our plans are from here. The Phantom, of course, our resident expert over in South Australia, and Dan Begala. Fantastic to have you back on the show. It's been a couple of weeks, but you've had some other things going on in your life. Congratulations on becoming a new dad, but it hasn't seemed to have impacted your SuperCoach fortunes at all, because you're ranked above all the rest of us in our experts. People might have seen that graphic went out on social in the last couple of days. So can you run us through how you've done it and just how your team is tracking at this stage, and I guess what your plans are for this week and going forward?
Thanks, Al. Yep, there's a 102K rookie in the family house now. He's a little cash cow. He started really well. His name's Henry. He's very cute and happy, healthy, and mum's done a great job. So shout out to little Henry Begala. But he's 7 days old, actually. But over to the team, I guess the main thing that I find that's put me in this position so far, I'm not home and hosed yet, but I've started really well, and that was getting the fundamentals and a lot of the players that were a little bit pod-like, being Cripps, Hewitt, going early on English in round 3 and shorting Gaunt. Those were the sorts of moves I've made so far, and I think that's put me in really good stead thus far. But again, at the end of the day, it's round 3. I haven't been impacted by any CV19, so no players have been withdrawn whatsoever. I do feel like I've missed one important player, and he's a bit of a stepping stone defender, and I think that was little David Bowie, or Ziggy Stardust, as he likes to be called. I missed him, and I took Aaron Hall instead. So for me, that's the only glaring omission from my side. And again, that's not proven. We're not sure if he's the real deal yet, but what I saw last week when the game was hot against Essendon, I think he put about 40 points on in the third quarter, and that's what worried me a little bit, because he is capable. And when they get on the end of a belting, I'm sure he's gonna score well. So otherwise, 3 trades last week, used my boost. I loved that. That was a great new feature. And it was very flexible and easy to use throughout the round, which I really appreciated. And that was to short Gawn to take English. I hated doing it, but I had to do it. I brought in Zeri for the forward line, and then I brought in Aaron Hall for Lockie Whitfield, who Hall, had plenty of the footy, but he just had 8 or 9 clangers. So that's very un-Hall-like, but that's what happens on a Saturday night at the Gabatoire, as they call it. It's fast, it's wet, it's always dewy, and I guess that probably didn't play to his strengths. He needs to be at Marvel Stadium with Thor and Ragnarok with the roof shut, with no wind and perfect 18 degrees Celsius.
I'm not sure whether they played the SCG, I think, this week, don't they? So I don't know. I think it's
Sydney.
There's flash flood warnings up there at the moment. So
wow, that's not good.
Probably not ideal for Aaron Hall this weekend, but I'm not sure if that's going to hit Moore Park. But Phantom, welcome aboard. How's the Phantom's team looking at this stage? It's an interesting time of year, because we put our expert teams, trades, I should say, on the website yesterday, and some of us are doing nothing, and some people are using all their trades and a boost as well. So sort of where do you sit? Is it time to consolidate, or do you need to be making some moves still to catch up if your rankings maybe aren't as high as what you're hoping at this stage?
It's good to be back, Al. Good to see the people's champion. I guess just love how he can, summarise his team there, just tell everyone how good he is without actually making it sound like he's saying it. He's flying, so he can do that. Me, I'll tell you about my trade a little bit later. I'm not going to go into it just yet. But other than that, you don't have to trade. Be content with not trading this week. If your team's looking good, you've got all the right rookies, all the right cash cows, the mid-prices, just wait for that money to come in. Save those trades and those boosts and go early and aggressively when it comes to upgrade season. But of course, if you are further a little bit behind, say our friend the hipster over here on the lair struggled over the first 3 rounds, there's plenty of time to catch up. We've seen it before over the years, plenty of time to catch up in KFC SuperCoach, especially with more trades. So have to be a little bit aggressive. If you need to do what like Dan Begala did last week, trade out a Max Gore, maybe trade out Rowan Marshall, Braden Pruce. Was good last week, finally made his club debut for the Giants, and reallocate that cash elsewhere and give yourself a 2-for-1 sort of premium buy, then by all means do that and play aggressive to catch up. Don't lose any further ground. But for me, I think I have to do it out. Darcy Parish, I don't want to jump off him. I think he'll bounce back against the Crows this week, but I just cannot watch Tom Green any longer do what he's doing without him in my side after what happened last year. He's starting, like I said, on the lair. His first 2 scores, it just showed everyone that I wasn't crazy. Then when he went bang again, 140 points in round 3, he's the 3rd ranked overall scorer in the competition. Cannot go without him any longer. Parish to Green, locked in.
Do you think? Surely he's not going to finish the year as a third-ranked scorer overall, is he? Or you're that hot on him?
We might finish number one, yeah. But I think with him, the good thing is that Leon Cameron's looks to have finally realised that he's their best centre bounce midfielder. He was the team high or game high contested possessions last week, and he's getting forward and kicking goals too. So we saw all that potential in his first 2 years in the competition. We even saw some high scores when he got that opportunity. So he's almost their number one man in the midfield now, especially that first possession. We know he's the champion data record holder for contested possessions at the under-18 champs, and that's what we're seeing now at the top level. So he looks fitter. He's finally got his chance. Saying I don't want to trade out Parish, I still think Green is a chance to outscore Parish from here.
So he's 502,000, Tom Green, averaging about 140 over the first 3 rounds. He's already gone up 72,000 after his first price rise. So Dan, Rodney here asking a question about, he's included Tom Green in there. Also Cripps and Hewitt, who've had similar, probably not quite as big price rises, but they've already had that first big price gain. So you've missed out on their initial bargain price. But, you could still argue all good value given how well they're playing. Is it too late to jump on one of these guys if you missed them?
No, I don't think it's too late. I think this is probably the last chance you'll have, last chance saloon for those players, because I think the last couple of years I've always been a bit hesitant taking players when they're breaking out or they're doing something exciting like Cripps and Hewitt. And in the past 2 years, I think I went late on Ridley, and he became a top 8 defender 2 years ago. I've done the same thing in the past. It's just if you do miss them and they do solidify themselves amongst the top 6 to 8 defence or midfielders, you're in a spot of bother because you've missed the points. You're going to have to pay premium dollar for them, and everyone else, every other man and his dog's already got them. So I do think Cripps, for instance, Cripps, he's back to his absolute best on the weekend. He was 70 at half time, huge against the Hawks. And then I think he got a bit of a tag from, it might have been Jaeger, Amir or Warple, I can't remember who it was, but still got his 120. And then on the Hewitt side of things, we've seen Walsh come back, we've seen Sarah come back, and he still punched out 110 and looked fantastic when the game was on the line. There's something about Hewitt, and Hewitt for me, he's ranked, I think he's the second highest scoring defender at the moment. You don't get defenders that play in the midfield, they don't grow on trees, players like that. So for me, I'd probably prioritise Hewitt first because his price point's lower. There's probably more upside on the capital side of things. And also I think he is a bona fide top 6 defender. Cripps, I also think, I'm biased. I love Cripps. I love Carlton. I think he'll finish top 8. But I do think that the position that Hewitt is in, where he's playing 15, 16, 17, 18 centre bounce attendances, you must pick those midfielders if they're available in defence. And that's all I've done. I saw his pre-season. Both those players passed my eye test. Cripps looked really fit and he looked confident and kind of swaggy. And then over to Hewitt, I just thought, geez, I think this new role and what he is as a player, he doesn't waste the footy. He's good on both sides, left and right, and he's elite at ground level. When he goes to his knees, he always wins the footy and spits out a contested handball. So he's a beautiful player to watch in the Carlton outfit with the keys and able to go running.
I agree. 453K for Hewitt. We spoke last week when punters out there were questioning what Hewitt's role would be or what would effect on his score would be with the return of that full Carlton midfield, Adam Chera, back in last week to play with Walsh for the first time in 2022. But we said last week that he could almost be the most important one of that midfield mix, given what he does on the inside. He's the one that unleashes those guys, as Dan mentioned, how good he is, how clean he is at the contest. And he's allowing a Patrick Cripps to be more damaging on the outside. He's allowing, we know how good Sam Walsh and Adam Chera are by foot as well, and when they get out and run. So I think if you're going to move anyone outside of the on-ball mix, it's not George Hewitt would be the last one. I think you're going to move if I was Michael Voss. So 453K, I definitely agree with Dan. You can jump on this week and get yourself a pretty underpriced top 6 defender.
Yep.
Yeah, well, there's some questions here we might get to later about, fallen primos we might be keeping an eye on. And, if someone like a Whitfield dropped to 450K, you'd have to take a look at him, even if he's out of form. And if you can get Hewitt, who's averaging, 115 at that price, then, it sort of puts it in perspective. But I guess the thing is then you want them to be keepers because, someone like a Tom Green or Cripps, if you get them at their cheapest price and you end up having to trade them out later in the year because they're just outside that sort of top 6, top 8 bracket, well, it's not ideal, but it's, it's not the end of the world. But if you're paying over 500K for them, then you probably want to hang on to them for the whole year. Now, the other big talking point this week, Dan, you did this last week by the sound of it. Yep. Is it too late to trade Gawn out to Tim English seems to be the number one option?
I think it probably is, because what I saw in that game against Essendon, like he was like, I mean, Draper and the other fella that you spoke to, Carlton, GWS, Phillips, weren't exactly Cox and Natanui in their prime. It was pretty easy pickings for Max on Friday night. And I thought he's back to his marking best. He took a few good intercepts, took a few contested marks, and he also got a few holding the ball decisions on those ruckmen that aren't that aware at ground level. So score was great. For the next few weeks, not having Gawn is going to be one of those anxiety-ridden decisions where you're just waiting for him to pop. I do know that Ken Hinkley tonight will employ Lycett to be very aggressive, very physical, and they might have someone else that will help out. So he's not going to get a free mark down the line like he loves to get, and I think hopefully Dogger Jackson takes a bit of the ruck time. But yeah, trading him now is probably not the best move. I think that he's already lost 50, 60 grand. He's only going to lose another 30, 40. And I guess if you're doing it just to free up capital, I think it's a risky move that you've missed the best opportunity that was last week. Firstly, English has gone up, Gawn's gone down, and the amount of profit you can make or the amount of money you can make on that is just, it's not really commercial, really. You're not going to do that move, waste a trade, and then get caught in a position when you're eventually going to get your Gawn back. The reason I chose English, and I mean, I loved his first two games. I thought, wow, this guy's, he's arrived. I love that he was a ruck forward. I just know that eventually he's going to fall into F2, F3 or F1, wherever he ends up landing, and Gawn will slot back into R2. So that is my plan, and I'll upgrade someone like Brody or Rochelle or even someone in the guts like a Dacos and turn them into Gawn. So having those guys with the dual position status is so good for flexibility. It just means I can get Gawn. I can do so many different maneuvers to get Gawn back into my team, and if it gets really desperate and he's just punching out 180 every week, I'll just get rid of a midfielder who's underperforming, like Matt Rowell. I'll go, see you later. In you come, Max Gawn, and close out that position that I'm missing.
Phantom, the other ruckman that we should talk about, we won't spend too long on him because he's going to be, I think, the number one talking point next week, but some players already have him, is Braden Preuss. You touched on him earlier. Now, obviously, you're a big fan of Leon Cameron, as you've been pumping him up.
Trying to get him a contract.
Would you think about him this week if you don't have him, or should we all just hold fire and let him play another game, hope he's picked for a third game before we do anything crazy with Braden Preuss?
I don't mind getting on this week. I think if you are set on trading Max Gawn, I don't think it's worth it, the Tim English move. But if you're playing aggressive, I think the Gawn to Preuss move gives you enough money to then upgrade elsewhere. I don't mind that. We know we've got Tristan Cherry coming in potentially to be a ruckman with the DPB additions in for round 6. So you've got the backup coming if you go for Preuss at R2 and something happens with Leon. But he was very good finally in his club debut, 16 disposals, 12 contested possessions, 109 points into 69% game time against Jarrah Witts, who's no slouch either. So Leon Cameron did say post-match that the selection dilemma, the playing two rucks, is something they'll discuss most weeks. But Flynn was beaten comprehensively by the Tigers duo the week before. So I can't see Flynn coming back in and taking over. Flynn could play with Preuss, but Preuss has shown his scoring in limited game time is up there enough anyway. So if you're making a move, Rowan Marshall maybe could be the one. Rowan Marshall to Braden Preuss. I don't mind that move this week. But of course, if you're just going for the cash generation, pumped out another 100 this week and 80 the week after, he'll be over 400K by round 7. It's that Riley O'Brien R3 cash generation from a couple of years ago they probably can't miss out on. So if you're looking at that angle, then yes, wait a week. But if you need him as a trade down option to make money this week and play him on field, I'm all for that too.
Yeah, Mark Pitney was another one in that bracket that just made us a stack of cash on the bench as a ruckman. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one next week to decide, is that too many points to have stuck on the bench? We've sort of been through there before, but we'll get to that all next week, I reckon. But had a couple of questions about Matt Rowell. Ash asking, could you trade him to English? I mean, what have you thought of Matt Rowell the last couple of weeks, Dan? Someone else suggested trading him potentially to Tom Green, but I'm just sort of happy with him sitting there, not expecting 150s every week, but he's been a little bit his scores haven't been quite as high. Is that anything to be concerned about?
No, I've just seen him being like very blue collar and workman-like. I've really liked his games. Like, he hasn't had the prolific ball use that he traditionally would, like that round 1 encounter where he went bananas against West Coast, a favourite team of his. I think he kicked, like in his second game, he kicked 2 and had 40 that night, and you had him as the captain. But
yes, I did.
I do think that you just have to hold firm with him. We bought him for 330 grand. He is a stepping stone player who is capable of pretty high-end scoring. Like, we know he's got a massive ceiling. We also know he doesn't really bottom out and go below 80. So, I mean, I'm going to stick with Rowell. I have no concerns. There are bigger holes in other people's sides than what is Matt Rowell. I think Matt Rowell is he's a he's a third or fourth problem in most sides, so I wouldn't really worry about him, and I wouldn't even consider him a problem just yet. There's when we saw Took get tagged in the weekend, Took got absolutely really ridden by Ash and De Boer. It's probably the toughest tag going in town, and I guess coaches have to be very wary of GWS now. I think that's the big concern I've got. Like whoever faces GWS, like Petrarca, Clary next week, I think you'll have to keep your eye out for them and probably not VC them.
Andy Brayshaw this weekend.
Oh, Andy Brayshaw's going to he's going to have 10 touches, I think, unfortunately. But I think I am going to keep Rao and have no concerns on holding on because it's not a problem for me. Like Berry's a bigger problem for others. The scoring propensity of Stevens is a problem. I'd get rid of him before those. And there's a lot more other options out there. Being Bruce is the big decision next week. Can we move English to F6 and then put Bruce there intermittently at R2? Like there's all these things you've got to start thinking about because you don't want to miss a Pitney. Or you don't want to miss a Riley O'Brien circa 2019 or whatever year it was, because those ruckmen, they appreciate so quickly and they actually score quite well. So next week, I'm sure Bruce will be the biggest decision on the table. I'll be probably looking at him and I'll probably just pivot English forward. But this week, Raul is not an option for moving on. Like he is not in my gun because he'll still have 12 tackles even if he only gets 18 touches and get his ton. So I'm still bullish on Raul. I really liked the game he had last week and I loved his round one. So, I mean, 200s and a 70 or whatever it was, I think that's no cause of concern as it stands.
Yeah, no, especially at his price. Now, Phantom, over to Adelaide, you would have had a close eye on this guy last week, but I think this actually kind of plays into something that Dan was saying, and I was looking at my team, and we've seen people thinking about trading out Josh Rochelle. I think he's the most traded out player at the moment. After a down score last week, has sort of got his break even creeping right up, but he's still making some money at the moment. But one thing probably I reckon people could keep in mind is that if you're trading out a Rochelle or a Ward or some of our bench cover this week, like I'm looking at who am I going to trade to Bruce next week? I'm really going to want him. But, maybe if a Hayes or Dixon get dropped, that sort of is an obvious opening. But otherwise, there's not a heap of candidates. So I don't think I'd want to be trading out, any of my sort of lower-ish, rookies this week because I might be handy to just get one more week out of him and I might have to move one of them on next week. But what do you think about Josh Rochelle? Are you worried about him at all? Or I think he scored 36 in the showdown, but giving away a 50-metre penalty at the end there didn't help him.
Yeah, no, I think too early, definitely. I was there on Friday night. He was pretty good. He gave away 2 free kicks in the first quarter, then out in the full in the second term. So he's playing catch-up for a while. He was pretty good in the third term. He tended 5 centre bounces for the night and got involved further up the ground, especially in the third quarter as the Crows made a bit of a charge. So, and then as you mentioned, that 50-metre penalty, Fantasy Freako tells us he lost over 11 points for that 50-metre penalty alone. So, yes, the break-even looks a little daunting at 42. It's pushed out. He's the first rookie to have his break-even push out a little bit, but scored a SuperCoach talent debut. He's too talented to not pop up again with a significant performance. I think he's got a 70-point score in him over the next couple of weeks, and that'll kickstart his cash generation again. So I understand people looking to him as the one to make way to get someone else, but I'm definitely in the whole Josh Rochelle camp.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Now, Braden's asked here, who are the one gamers to keep an eye on this week? Well, actually, I think I misread this question first because I thought he was talking about Bubble Boys, and the obvious one there is Nick Martin at Essendon. If you don't have him, 102k forward, I think he's a must. I suppose the tricky thing there for some people is who do you trade out to get him, and maybe it's a Rochelle because if you've got a stacked bench everywhere else, you might have to trade out a rookie who's not going that bad. There are a couple of other Bubble Boys this week, like I know Driscoll or Dixon at West Coast, who probably will make a bit of money, but not sure how good his job security is. But I don't think any of the others are really must. Was there anyone who made their debut at the weekend who we need to be watching in terms of a rookie we might want to pick up in the next few weeks? I've heard there's some others that are floating around who could get a debut soon, which could actually be the timing might be a bit better for us. If our friend Tim Mitchell mentioned that Greg Clark might not be too far away over at the Eagles, he'd definitely get a game at the moment if he was fit, and he could be a great rookie option if he's playing his third game in round 6 or something like that. Would work out really nicely in terms of KFC SuperCoach trading. Maybe an Elijah Hollands, who you started with, Phantom, and Tyler Sonzi is another one just to keep an eye on. Might get a game at the Tigers this week after he scored 177 KFC SuperCoach points in the VFL last week. Fantasy Freako tells us. So he's another one who could be a rookie option in a couple of weeks. Anyone else there that I've missed?
Yeah, just quickly on Hugh Dixon, going to make a lot of money this week. I think 4th lowest break even in the comp. But if you're looking at a way to get Nick Martin in, it's probably, I think, Hugh Dixon, given you mentioned now the job security question marks over him with a lot of first choice Eagles coming back into the side. I think it's hard because he's going to make money this week, but I'd rather trade him out than a Josh Rochelle for the longer term play. But in terms of one gamers, Neil Erasmus, high pick from the Dockers last year, scored 58 on debut. Again, there's David Mundy's back on the track. What happens there? He was pretty good though, so he probably holds his spot over a couple of others. Another one also for the Magpies, Reef McInnes, who's been on the list for a couple of years now, scored 61 on debut for the Pies, 123k mid. So a couple of guys to watch out for over the next couple of weeks on top of those ones you mentioned there.
Yep, I like that. And Dan, what about Larry's asking about Zach Butters? He's a bit worried about him. Is trading out Butters? Surely we're not going to do that after one low score. He was a bit he got injured early in that game, didn't he?
Yeah, he got cleaned up. I was reading online by Sam Powell-Pepper. So friendly fire, unfortunately, but I think he was pretty badly winded, or maybe got a little rib tickler, as they say. But I don't know. I saw some training footage on 360, and he was running around kicking the footy on Tuesday. So like having a little flush the legs sort of thing session, and he looked fine. Like they're all fine. So I think he'll play. And I kind of like Butters because he scored so well in the first two rounds and copped a massive knock in the other game. But I think he's a big game player. I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the top three people on the ground tonight if they have a real crack tonight. If Port rock up and really put a line in the sand. But look, I like both those players. And I've got Treloar and I've got English. English sits at R2. Treloar sits at F2 with Dunkley leading the charge. But I feel there is one thing about my side. I do feel way too concentrated and overweight Western Bulldogs players. So if they do get on the end of a flogging, I'm going to be in a bit of a pickle, I suspect. But Dunkley's pretty consistent. He performs and always gets the job done. But I will have to diversify out of that at some stage, and it might mean I have to trade someone like Treloar when he's on the bye, or I might trade someone when they get COVID-19, pending those sorts of things happening. But I would not be moving Butters on. I think that was a pretty bad hit, and he just battled away and got it done, and a bit of ice rest and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure I'll be right to go tonight. It's a short break, though, like 5 or 6 days. Could be still sore, but just jab him up and get him ready to go, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't be trading Zach Butters. What about Phantom Tristan asking? So we mentioned a couple of guys like a Hewitt or a Cripps. Is it worth getting on after one price movement? Tristan Cherry, I think, is someone. M. Chalice, who obviously Supercoach Mama won Supercoach last year. She mentioned she was a special guest on our podcast, and she mentioned that Cherry is someone that you could pay up for after their first price rise because not only is he scoring really well as the number one ruck for the Kangaroos, but we think in a couple of weeks he's almost guaranteed to become a dual position ruck forward, which will be really, really handy cover for really, you could nearly keep him for the whole year, but certainly through to the buys at least. If you've got one of these dual position players on the bench in the ruck, then he's great insurance if one of your rucks misses. So I don't mind the idea of getting him a week late, but what about this combination though? Could we trust Gallant at the Crows? He looked pretty good last week, but Big Tex is breathing down his shoulder.
Yeah, I do like bringing in Cherry. I think negative 36 break even, plenty of money to make too. I'm all for jumping on him, but I don't love the Rochelle to Gallant. He was pretty good, Lockie Gallant, and I'll probably give him a bit of a go. But you mentioned our Tex back in this week. Riley Thilthorpe also still in the sandful. Gallant probably holds his spot for the Crows this week. Obviously, after his showdown performance, Darcy Fogarty was pretty poor again. He's probably the one to make way for Tex, I would have thought, if I had to make the call now. But again, I don't think Gallant is not going to make enough money or score as consistently to warrant trading Rochelle out. So ideally, if you can get it another way, Durden to Cherry is good. Obviously, Durden won't play this week. I don't have any problem with that, but I try to avoid that first trade, Tristan, if you can.
Yeah, I guess it's always tricky trying to get money from somewhere. Have you paid much attention to Tom Mitchell's form this year, Dan? Speaking of potential DPP moves, he could actually become a mid-forward, which would be pretty incredible. But spending a lot of time outside the centre square, I think if you've got him, that is one move you probably do have to make.
Well, I think Freako or Phantom published it this week in Herald Sun. That was that he's had 71-29 split between midfield and forward. Clearly, Titch is not in that first iteration of, or he's in that mix of midfielders, but I think Sam Mitchell's obviously favouring the likes of Ward, McDonald, Warple, who is a lot younger, and some of those younger brigade to really have a crack in the guts. And Titch did start as a forward at the Sydney Swans, and I think he was a great forward at about $400,000 at the Swans one year. So I think that would be one of the most amazing things if he transitioned to mid-forward in round 5. I would be loading up hard because I know his groins are a bit sore over the preseason, and I suspect he'll recover. And as we saw last year, he had shoulder surgery, and as the season wore on, the real Tom Mitchell came to the fore, and I wouldn't stay away thinking that that's not going to happen again. I reckon we'll see his best, but we just need him to tip over. Do you know what that threshold is? It 30%, or what's the percentage?
35.
Okay, so he needs about 10 minutes extra this week or the next week to sit up for. Please, Sam, put him there, because that would be a lay down Mazaire, as Gilbert Gardner would say. A lay down Mazaire forward, you just have to have on your side. He will go bananas for the second half of the season.
Well, Phantom, I think you probably have, you might have the stats on your fingertips, how many centre bounces Josh Ward has been getting, which is great for him, and hopefully that turns into a big score soon. But surely, he's going to get tired at some stage, and guys like Tom Mitchell will get a bit more time back in there.
Yeah, it is a concern Dan mentioned about giving the younger guys a go, but against Carlton, Hawks were -10 in centre bounce clearances when Mitchell was in attendance. So when Mitchell was there in the centre bounce, the Hawks won 1, the Blues won 11.
Wow.
So, people saying waiting for us to say the Hawks need him in there. Well, maybe they don't. But again, those kids are probably going to get tired at some point, averaging 9 less disposals per game this season, attending less centre bounces. Look, the Mitchell to Tom Green move, even the Mitchell to Patrick Cripps move, I think if he didn't do it last week, is the one to go this week. He's going to drop significant cash, and then we can maybe reassess him later in the year when maybe he gets DPP or at least starts to work back into some of the form we know he can produce.
Well, Dan, there was a question here. I'll have to go back and scroll up and try and find it, but someone asked if there were fallen primos that you might be just keeping one eye on for in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Is there any names off the top of your head? I know the Bont is coming down in price. Jack Steele, if you didn't start him like me, might be one you could aim for. Is there any others?
Yeah, well, I actually texted my mates. I think it was Monday morning when I woke up and looked at the break evens and where the prices dropped overnight, because it was a pretty late game on Sunday for those with the baby on the way. Jack Steele for me is the player I want on my side, because I know he is yet to fire. Like his first 2 rounds, he looked like a bit scratchy, and he still found the footy, but not as prolifically as we would have signed with him. So my view is that we can get Jack Steele within the next 3 to 4 weeks, get him like high 5s, and then you'll end up with someone that will probably average 130 points per week till the rest of the season. Bont, on the other hand, yes, I love Bont, but again, as I said at the start of this, I'm very overweight Western Bulldogs players, so I can't really go that avenue. It would be pretty silly for my side and remiss not to diversify. So Bont, the other thing with him is he did an ankle in round 1. I think he's still probably nursing that, and the scores that he's had recently have been on the back of like match-winning goals. Against Sydney, he kicked a match-winning goal. The week before, I think he did some pretty big stuff late, and I just don't think he's been at his best just yet. So for me, it's Steele's my number 1 priority, and then outside of that, I haven't given much thought to other than Tom Mitchell. If he does get that mid-forward eligibility, that would be a game changer for me. So, and that's really all I've paid attention to, because I'm very fortunate. A lot of my premiums that I've picked are in the green or in the black, as they say. They're all performing really well. I haven't had too many players in the red, like really dropping value. So it's very, very lucky so far, and that's a fluke, really. It's not like there's not much to it. I think I've just been lucky with my selections this year. Those line ball decisions have all paid off.
Yeah, well, we don't believe you there, Dan, but very good start from you. We know you are the people's champ for a reason. You made a very good start. So give yourselves some credit there. But a couple other names that I've had a look at. Tuke Miller, we've spoken about him. Given his first couple of weeks, he went down by 21K after copping that tag, and he's going to come out again. But, even KFC SuperCoach Ton on the weekend, and KFC SuperCoach Plus even tells us if he scores 132 and 127 in the next 2 weeks, his price will get down to 620K still. So anything lower than that, we could be looking at a sub 600K Tuke Miller on the back of that performance on the weekend. So keep an eye on him. A couple others to look out for as well. Sam Walsh, obviously after that initial score to come back, he's got to break him to 163 this week. Rory Laird in the same boat, break him to 166. Mitch Duncan as well as a forward, 159. His break-even is at 540K, so he could come down to about 500K as well. If we probably need to see a little bit more for him as he builds up to full fitness after an interrupted year, but a sub-500 Mitch Duncan as a mid-forward could be a nice little early upgrade.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting time in a few weeks when, some of these guys are really making us a lot of money, like a Cherry or a Will Brodie types, Bowie in defence. if we've got Berry and Rowell in the midfield, if you're not going to keep these guys, and then once we've sort of the bank balance really fattens up, and some of the rookies too, like even a McCartan, but then obviously Dacos and these guys, and then there'll be some really good players that we can try and aim for as well. So deciding who goes out when and who you try and pick up is going to be really interesting, and that'll probably separate. We talked about the rankings, and I'm back in the 30,000s, which is not where I'd like to be, but the gap from there to the guys who are maybe 20,000 ranks ahead of me is really not that great. You get one, good week, and you get your captain right and that kind of thing, and it can make a huge difference. But then I think once we start making those trade decisions, it's going to really sort of start separating some teams. So that'll be a really interesting time. I'm sort of trying to not do anything too crazy between now and then, but you never know what's going to happen. Question that probably we need to quickly discuss, and then we'll maybe get into some captains this week. Nilu here has got the same issue as me. Jack Crisp held him after round 1, and he came out and scored really well in round 2, but then round 3 was just not great again. 85 last week. Dan, I'm guessing you didn't start him, but would you stick tight that you've gone this far with him? I think probably if you don't have George Hewitt, maybe you'd be the one, but I can't really see anyone else who I'd obviously need to trade him to. So I think I'm just going to have to ride the roller coaster, as Nilo says.
I think, as you would see with Crisp, he's going to finish as a top 6 defender, and he started pretty average, and that's not great. But over the long term, I think you're going to see him average a lot more over week by week to bring his average up to 110 by season's end. So I think you stick fat with him. Same thing with Whitfield. I did it last week because I just wanted to lock in who I thought was the best defender, and I think that's Aaron Hall in terms of his scoring propensity. He was obviously average against Brisbane, unfortunately. But outside of that, Whitfield's going to bounce back. He's going to average 103, 105. Crisp will average 110, and Ridley will average 105. It's just what they do, these guys. They're consistent, ultra premium. So I think hold firm and it should be okay. It's just that his role's been changing week by week. Sometimes he's running through the guts. Sometimes he goes off a half-back flank. And I reckon some of these kids in that Collingwood outfit are going to run out of gas really quickly, like the Ginnivans of the world, if they focus on little punch-ons and things on the side. I think they'll run out of gas pretty quickly, and Crisp will have to step up to the plate and really shoulder some of that workload at Collingwood with his pre-seasons. And durability, barely missed a game, Crisp. So I'll back him in to come back. I think he's still a good pick.
Yeah, I agree. Just quickly on that, like Dan mentioned, we saw in round 1, Dacos, Lipinski are up. Crisp was down. Round 2 was the other way around. Round 3, Lipinski and Dacos were among the top ball winners for the Pies. Crisp was a bit down. So Taylor Adams out this week in the AFL's health and safety protocols. So I would be definitely keeping Jack Crisp if you held on over so far.
Yeah, DeGoey out as well, of course.
Yeah.
Suspended. So, you'd think Crisp will get plenty of time in the centre bouncers. Who are they playing this week, the Pies? They've got
West Coast.
West Coast. So,
big win.
Yeah, you'd think he should go all right against them. So that actually leads us in a beautiful segue. Captains and vice captains. I think, Fant, you've got a floating donut there to pick a vice captain. I'm not sure. Dan, have you got a 0 on the bench somewhere? I'm not sure I will, unless someone like a Jack Hayes gets dropped.
Yeah, I've got Bodie Uland from Gold Coast. He's in the final game of the round, actually, when the Grand Prix on 4-10 against my mob Carlton. But the only thing is with Bodie is that I have to flirt with the notion of Sam de Koning and McCartan at F6. So if Sam de Koning gets 40 on Friday night, it actually stuffed up my ability to loophole. So it's kind of a perilous position. And again, with health and safety, you don't really want to say, I'm going to turn the E off on Sam de Koning, because if someone gets COVID during the round, you'll have no protection. So you actually have to play Sam at D7. For me, I'm going to avoid tonight's game because I'm pretty weary. I think Willem Drew will go to whoever's hot tonight. Like if Clary's hot, they'll go to him. If Track's hot, they'll go to him. And then tomorrow night, obviously we know Joel's out, so we know who's coming in.
Yes.
I've forgotten his name. I've actually gone blank. It's
Marco
the Irishman.
Connor.
Marco Connor will come in and he'll wear poor old Lockie like a glove. And I'm a bit worried about that being like a sub-80 performance. But again, to that notion, last year Lockie was playing with pretty much a fractured back, I think. So I don't know whether Marco Connor will have the guile to go with Lockie. But they're the two games I'm avoiding. And then I think I'll probably flick it into McRae against Richmond. I mean, Frico put out a great tweet yesterday. It was basically he's 163 or he's 107. So I'm hoping that he's 163 this weekend against Thompson Dow. But otherwise, I don't really have any. I'm also weary of going to Cripps on Sunday. All the forecasts say that Cripps is probably the highest scorer this round, but I do feel weary that they'll put a bit of time into him. They might run a Rowell on him, or they might run an Anderson, or someone learns their craft, or they might run a Took to try and break his tag. So I'm not sure. I might throw it to Phantom because I think Phantom's done a bit more research on this, but that's where my head's at. It's very uncertain as it stands.
Tom Green against the Dockers on Saturday night.
Don't have him. Don't have him.
I traded out my rolling last week for Cherry. So unless, you're right, same as me, Jack Hayes is out or Hugh Dixon, I might not have it. But, I think if I don't have one, I think I'll back in Jack McRae against the Tigers, like Dan said. Reliable captain option. I don't think he'll go under 100 again. And like you mentioned, all signs point towards a significant score against the Tigers. Could Josh Dunkley in that game too, potentially. Maybe Jack Steele, who've got him against the Hawks at the MCG on Saturday, Arvo. But probably hard to go past one of those Bulldogs for me.
McRae barely touched it in the last quarter last week. He was out on a wing. Is Bevo sort of playing his little tricks there? Does that make you nervous at all?
No, I think we've seen that a little bit in the past. The sort of head down and the disinterest a little bit we saw is the concerning thing. But we've seen him go out to a wing before and still dominate. So I don't think it's going to matter. Given they've got so many guys can run through there. They're not all going to start in the centre for every minute of every game. So I'm not concerned one bit, and I'll be backing him.
Got a few people throwing in their suggestions here. Grundy typically scores pretty well against the Eagles. I remember over in Perth, he had an absolute stinker against Nick Nat a few years ago. But looking at his last 2 or 3 scores, he's always been sort of 120, 130 plus. So he's not a bad shout. And if you've got Isaac Heaney, they play fairly early on the Saturday afternoon. It depends when you've got loopholes and things like that. But as a potential VC, anything could happen against the Kangaroos, although maybe it depends on the weather up in Sydney. But he's another possible option.
That's the thing. Our plenty of rain forecast, as you mentioned. We said it on the lair. We'd liked Heaney as a VC, but then saw the weather forecast. Does tackle, wins a lot of footy in the contest, but it's not probably a day where he's going to bowl and kick 6. So just something to consider, as you mentioned.
Yeah. All right. We'll wrap it up there. We've been going plenty of time. Thanks, everybody. There's heaps of questions there, but people can maybe try and debate amongst themselves in the comments. But it's been a really great chat. Thanks, Dan, for coming back on. Congratulations again on your new arrival. That's brilliant. There we go. The goat is back, and we've got a little baby goat as well. So
baby goat.
Yeah. Fantastic news. Phantom as well. We always love having you too. And thanks everybody for watching. Good luck with your trades this week, and we'll talk again soon.
See you guys.
Cheers, guys.